All right, welcome back for another episode of the TFD Performance Podcast. We are joined by Integrated Training Royalty. We've got Mr. Dave Wood all the way from across the ditch in New Zealand. Dave, thanks for coming on.
Cheers, Geordie. I must be your favourite person to do podcasts with because this is the third one.
I was going to say this is our third time together. It's because I think you, and I don't want to tell you this because you'll get your straps on your boots far too big. I'm pretty sure you're the most downloaded guest across the Fight Science podcast, and I'm probably going to say on the TFD Performance podcast. I never wanted to tell you that because you'll get too big for your boots.
I should get something for that.
Yeah, maybe I'll send you like a diet cake or like a celery cake or something in celebration for it. Anyway, Dave, let's get into it. What I do want to talk to you about today, I think every time we come on and we chat, we've spoken about many different things. When you came onto the scene, especially working with my athletes a few years ago, you had a monumental shift in their perspectives on performance, and we saw the results of it almost immediately. And you've continued with this through Woody's movement workshop, through your integrated training. You've continued making waves, not just with my athletes in MMA, you've expanded out and you're working with not only athletes in surfing or endurance sports, but you've moved into the corporate world. How's that growth been? In the last 2 years, I feel like you've just exploded business-wise.
Yeah, well, Woody's movement workshop's not called that anymore. It's integrated training. And yeah, it's been, like I started this business in this is just my garage that I'm sitting in right now. And yeah, it has expanded rapidly. And what has been difficult is the actual work with the athletes or the people is, I find that the easy part. The difficult part is running the business. And that's been like a huge learning experience for me, especially because it took off quite quickly and I didn't have the systems in place, the sort of protocols and systems that make it easy to run a business. So it's been a huge learning curve, but yeah, one that I've kind of enjoyed.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And I talk to my business partner about this in my supplement business. Is scaling a business too fast can be great for many reasons, like it gets lots of cash flow and everything in, but scaling a business is quite often the biggest reason why they fail, because you don't have the pillars, you don't have the foundation to support that growth. Anyway, we're not here to talk about business. We're here to talk about the integrated training, Woody. I want to get this out of the gate really fast, because over the years that I've known you and everything you've taught me and everything I've applied to myself in my business life, in my personal life, in my athletic life, I feel like when people talk about this and they often refer to you, oh, that's the breathwork guy. That's the guy in New Zealand does the breathwork. And to be quite honest, it shits me to tears. It shits me to tears when I hear that, because what you preach within your integrated training is so much more than just the breath work. It's so much more than just breath and in and out and controlling your breath. That's a tool of this bigger system. Can you talk to us and can you clarify this for people, the integrated training? What is the system that you're actually working with these guys?
Yeah. Definitely don't want to be pigeonholed into just being a breathing guy, because that's not, that's a small part. It's a very important part, but it's a small part of what I do. I guess, like, to give a definition of what I do, I help high-performing athletes and leaders improve their mental focus and ability to regulate stress and pressure in real time. And that, part of that, again, is the breathing, but it's also, tapping into these intricate body systems that are designed to regulate stress and pressure, your nervous system. It's like, when I look at a human being in terms of performance, I just look at a whole lot of different body systems and which ones are imbalanced, which ones need more time, energy, and focus, because that's all we are, is just an integration of these body systems. And if one is off, it has a ripple-on effect through all the other body systems. So if your breathing isn't optimal, it'll affect your cardiovascular capacity, it'll affect your muscular system, it'll affect your mind. So I just look at this integrated training. That's why it's called integrated training, because how we should treat people is in the integrated or holistic way.
Yeah, and it's a powerful concept as well, this integrated system, because I think we make the mistake, especially in health, and me and you have spoken at length about this, where I'll wear the hat as a dietitian, someone else will wear the hat as a strength conditioning coach, someone else will wear the hat as the mental coach. And really, it's like we're all blindfolded and we're all touching different parts of the same animal. This guy might be touching the trunk of the elephant. This guy over here is touching the tail. I'm touching the leg. In our own perspective, we think we're doing something completely separate, but really it's this combined effort. And that's what I love most about this, is that your approach to it is this integrated training where, okay, we just need to identify, okay, where's off? Does this guy have a sore trunk? Does he have a sore tail? Is it a sore leg? This is all part of the same system. How do we just optimize each component of this?
Yeah, and a big part of that is like in New Zealand, I don't know what it's like over the ditch there, but I'm assuming it's the same. In New Zealand, we tend to like, when we become, I guess, unwell, or we start developing symptoms, that are normally the tipping point to go and see somebody, we go to a specialist, right? And that specialist will look at you through their specialization. And what I try to do with my business is that if I'm dealing with a client, you know, an athlete or anybody, I will ring the physio, I'll ring the muscular therapist, I'll ring their doctor, I'll ring their cardiologist, and I'll talk to them. And often, like, when you make that phone call, they're really surprised and they don't understand why you've picked up the phone and you're chatting to them. And some of them actually really taken back and think it's rude, but that's what we should be doing. Like, we're all trying to, working with these people, we're all trying to, you know, achieve the same thing, which is optimal health and peak performance. You can only do that in an integrative and collaborative way.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So let's start this chat. Let's get into it, because I want to start at the foundation of this, and I want to start talking about central nervous system. So I want you to explain this to the people in pretty layman's term. We don't need to get too technical, but if I said to you, hey, Woody, give me a 1 to 2 minute explanation. What is the central nervous system? What are the different components of it?
Yeah, the easiest way to explain the central nervous system is just the body's processing center. It's like you can imagine it like the computer in your car. And it's what it is your brain and your spinal cord. That is your central nervous system. And it is responsible for sending and receiving information and interpreting that information, whether it be external or internal. And there's sort of, so we have the central nervous system, the brain, the spinal cord, but we also have a peripheral nervous system. And that's made up of two different things: the somatic nervous system, which is in our voluntary control. You put your hand on something hot and you take it away. And that peripheral nervous system is just your nerves that are picking up on all these cues in your body and relaying that information back to the central nervous system, your spinal cord and your brain, to control everything. So you can think of like the peripheral nervous system, I guess, is like the wires that come off that computer in your car to activate your air conditioning, for example. And the other part of this peripheral nervous system, which is not in our voluntary control, is the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic because it innovates things that we don't need to think about: our breathing, our blood vessel diameter, our heart rate, the digestion of our food. And so, yeah, just to break that down again, we've got that central nervous system, the brain, the spinal cord, and then we have our peripheral nervous system, which is just our nerves, which relay information back to that central nervous system. And one of the really important, interesting components, which I'm really interested in, of that peripheral nervous system is this autonomic part of the nervous system that we used to think we had no control over. Of course we have control over it. We have control over it through our mind, our thought process, our emotions, the way we interpret the world. And also, you know, back to the breathing, this is why the breathing is so powerful, because it's unique in that we can take conscious control of it to directly manipulate or regulate our autonomic nervous system.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to make. And because every time I've spoken to people and they go, oh, Dave Wood, breathwork guy, and you go, yeah, absolutely. He is the breathwork guy. He's a master of it. He knows absolutely how important breath is, but more importantly, he understands the supreme influence that breath can have on controlling this autonomic nervous system. Let's break that down a little bit more, because one of the terms that gets around, especially in sport, and in the sport that I'm in at the moment, ultra endurance, this term gets around a lot: self-regulation. And they always talk about self-regulation of the nervous system. Can you talk to us a little bit what that means?
Yeah, well, I guess, like, what is self-regulation? Self-regulation is, you know, your ability to manage your emotional state. And when you do that, when you have the awareness of being able to do that in real time, of course you manipulate your nervous system. Of course you're able to regulate your nervous system. And what we want to be able to do here in terms of regulating our emotional state is I guess to put it simply is just to not react to situations. We often just we get in this pattern of subconscious patterns of behaviour, which are ingrained patterns of behaviour that which tend to sort of like rear their head when we're under stress or pressure. Those are the patterns of behaviour that we've established over a lifetime. Often can come from, I don't know, like childhood traumas or our practical experience of the world. And we want to be able to, in these dynamic moments, have more conscious awareness. So accessing in the conscious part of our mind, because that's where all the creativity comes from, and your ability to focus. And yeah, a lot of the time, man, it's just in terms of self-regulation of our nervous system, it's just taking a step back and not reacting and responding. But self-regulation of our nervous system is all about, like, really, it's all about the pillars of health. It's about making sure that we, prioritize our sleep, making sure that we're prioritizing recovery. These are all things that are so important in terms of regulating our nervous system. One way that we can, just to so the listeners can sort of understand a little bit about how we can regulate our nervous system in real time is, and if we just connect back to the breathing, it is to take conscious control of our breathing rate and depth and slow down our breathing rate and depth. And why that is so powerful is because often in dynamic situations when there's stress or pressure, the body's stress response is activated, and one of the physiological aspects of that is to increase your breathing rate and depth. Now, if you want to intercept stress in real time, you can do the opposite. You can decrease your breathing rate and depth, and what you've effectively done is intercepted your body's or your physiological response to stress, which is an incredibly powerful thing to be able to do because it gives you control.
So let's go back and let's talk about this stress, Dave, because I want to break this down and I want to make this obvious to the guys that are listening that yes, the breath is a very important part, but it's a part of this bigger picture that we're going from. So we're breaking it down: the central nervous system, brain, and our spine. We've got the peripheral nervous system. We've got that somatic system. So if you touch something hot, you go, oh shit, and pull it back. The one I love most about it is the old doctor test. You whack your knee and you get the knee jerk reaction. Then we move over to the autonomic nervous system. We've got our sympathetic system, which is like our fight or flight. We've got parasympathetic, which is like the slow down, rest, digest. And now normally, like most things in biology, it exists in like this homeostasis, right? There's this nice little balance. And what you're saying just there is that when external things can happen, or this stress can happen, we're unregulating this balance. Is that right? Is that what we're referring to when we're talking about stress, or how do you define stress in terms of this autonomic nervous system?
Yeah, well, stress is just the body's reaction to a challenge or a demand. And if we look at the autonomic nervous system, when the stress response is initiated, and the stress is different for everyone. I want to make this one point before we go any further, and that is that stress is not bad. We have this negative connotation with stress, and we'll touch on that as we go forward, but stress is not bad. It's how we respond to the stresses in our lives that determines whether they are positive or negative in terms of how they impact our body. But yeah, just to touch on the autonomic nervous system, when we're in a stress state, it's like putting the gas pedal on in a car. And in our autonomic nervous system, that is the sympathetic branch. There's two branches. The sympathetic, we call that like red brain, adrenaline, increase in heart rate, increase in blood pressure, increase in your breathing, pupil dilation. This is a really incredible inbuilt survival response. Back in the day, it was either to go into battle or to go hunting. Nowadays, it's someone pulls in front of us in the car and we activate that part of our stress response, that sympathetic division. And then on the other side of that, we have that parasympathetic branch, which is where all the rest and recovery takes place. And those are different hormones that regulate that part of our nervous system. And that's the part of our nervous system we want to be able to shift into when we want to recover and we don't want to be on the go or in that higher arousal state. And the thing is, it's like a dimmer switch. We can turn it on and we can also turn it down. And that's what we want to have the awareness and ability to be able to do, is to be able to shift into the red brain, but also shift down into the blue brain. So that's really the control of our energy output. And this is, you know, at the very essence of performance, is understanding this stuff and understanding that we can shift our physical and mental state in real time in dynamic situations. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely does. I think just to clarify that, so that's a good point right there. So stress is not inherently bad itself. Stress is just this thing that happens in our body that is a consequence of our evolution, essentially. Like you were saying, like you think about when we were going out to hunt, or we were going out to whatever, well, we were waiting in the cave and we were just sleeping, and then a saber-toothed tiger comes in, that stress comes in, and then all of a sudden this survival mechanism kicks in. We just wouldn't survive if we just stayed in this parasympathetic state and we are like, oh yeah, whatever, there's a saber-toothed tiger there, who cares? But we need to kick in this red. We need these hormones to go and us to go, okay, we're in this flight mode. That's very positive, right? It's just nowadays we probably don't have too many office spaces where saber-toothed tigers are coming in. Maybe the saber-toothed tiger is Jenny from accounts coming in and telling you that you've got overdue work or something like that. These stresses aren't inherently bad. It's just they're inbuilt structures that serve a purpose, and it's how you respond to them that can either make them positive or negative. Is that what I'm getting from this?
Absolutely. So let's break that down a little bit. So if we have a good understanding of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, and what that is high energy versus low energy, I guess, you know, up regulated state, down regulated state. What would happen if you go through your day without pushing back against that stress, and you were living in that sympathetic dominant state because you're busy, you've got deadlines, you've got a mortgage, you've got a family, you've got to go training, you've got to jump in your car and sit in traffic for an hour. These are all stresses, right? These are all things that impact our mental and physical state and our nervous system. And if you are constantly in an upregulated state, and everyone, you hear this all the time, you know, I'm too busy, or, you know, I'm always on the go. Well, that is sympathetic load. So what happens is that you adapt to being sympathetic dominant in nature. And that has some huge ripple-on effects, both physically and mentally. So if we break that down a little bit, when you're living in a sympathetic dominant state, that is your nervous system, and that relays information to all these body systems. So if we break down one body system and it's the effects of being stuck in a sympathetic state, we could look at, you know, your cardiovascular system. So your heart rate will be constantly elevated, and the vascular system, one of the things of being stuck in that sympathetic dominant state is that your blood vessels constrict. And over time, the insidious effect of that is high blood pressure. So now the left side of the heart is having to push against more resistance because those blood vessels have constricted as a response to that sympathetic dominant tone. And we start predisposing ourselves over time, over many years, to left ventricular failure. So that actual heart muscle is having to pump against more resistance. So we have two things there. We have high blood pressure, and we have the effect it has on the heart. So yeah, sympathetic dominance, it spills over into every sort of part of our body. And what we want to be able to do is recognize some of those symptoms. You know, some of those psychological symptoms are just irritability, difficulty focusing, difficulty regulating our emotions. And so it's about having awareness that we're just living too much in the sympathetic dominant state, and having things throughout the day that we do to push back into that parasympathetic state, where all the rest and recovery and actual creativity come from. That sympathetic dominant state is not a place to be like loving and caring. It's a place for survival.
Okay, let's just go over this one more time, because I think this is an important point. And I think because people need to hear this, right? And I think something you said there, this is what I want to highlight: the sympathetic dominance, right? You think about the sympathetic nervous system, and the sympathetic nervous system, there are physiological things that happen when we're in this. And you think about the hormones that release: norepinephrine, noradrenaline, cortisol. What do those hormones do? They increase our heart rate, they constrict our vessels, they increase our blood pressure. We get that feeling of stress. Like you said, the body is an extremely successful adaptive machine. So if we're always in this, we can almost become normalized to this feeling. We can almost be we can become in a state where, you know, it's normal for us to feel like this, especially like you're saying, if you're in these environments where Jenny from accounts is always on you every morning, you're getting emails plugged in, you're always stressing out, I have to sit in traffic all for an hour. And then, oh, the old mate didn't make my lunch properly today. And you're always in this. You're saying that if you're in this, you can become normalized to this being in this sympathetic dominant state, and it can have all of these downstream effects with increased blood pressure and other health consequences that you may not even know if you don't have this awareness. If you're not aware of this and you can't bring yourself to this higher state, be like, you know what, maybe I am in this sympathetic tone. Is that right? Is that what we're talking about when people say, oh, you can suffer from chronic low-grade stress and that can be such a detriment to your health? Is that the same concept you're talking about?
Exact same concept, man. It's the body will adapt to any stimulus, right? The body is incredible at adapting, and we see this adaptation, for example, in athletes that are specialized in a certain sport, right? They will create imbalance around that specialization because that's just how they adapt to that specialization. If you are stressed all the time, your body will adapt to that, and you know, we see that in one way in the nervous system adapting to that sympathetic dominant state, and yeah, and this has just like a downstream effect into every body system. And, you know, we often like the signs and symptoms of that adaptation to that chronic stress can be vague. You know, it can be things like tension headaches. It can be things like irritable bowel syndrome. Why would the gut be affected by living in a chronically stressed state? Well, when you're in that sympathetic dominant state, that's a place for survival. You don't need to be breaking down and metabolizing food. That blood and that energy needs to be elsewhere, you know, used to increasing your heart rate and maintaining your blood pressure and, you know, more blood flow to your muscles to get you primed for action. And so the natural peristaltic movement of your gut starts slowing down because that energy is converted elsewhere. And of course, you're going to start having gut issues. And yeah, a lot of these things are just, they're vague, and we don't necessarily relate it back to stress, because our perception of stress is often this high level stress. It's not that. It's like often this is an insidious underlying stress that, you know, over time we start adapting to.
I want to bring this home because yes, obviously we're going to go in and we're going to talk about athletes, but just for the everyday person, the everyday work, you and I both work with a lot of corporate, you know, leaders, managers, CEOs, whatever. This is the one thing that I feel like I start all of my consultations with whenever I do a diet history, whenever I talk about them with the day. It's the one thing that's almost common in, I want to say 95 to 98% of these people is this chronic low-grade stress. And you know what manifests from this? Hey, Geordie, I've got these digestion issues. Hey, I've got these problems with my skin. Hey, you know what? My energy levels are really low. What is it in my diet? Is there a trigger in my diet that's doing this? Am I not eating enough? And I often come back to this and I go, well, you know what? Tell me about your day. What's going on? And they will tell me this. Hey, Jenny from accounts is always busting my balls. I get these aggressive emails all day. You know, I sit in traffic for 2 hours and people are honking at me. And it's like, okay, well, maybe what it is that, you know, it very well may be, maybe you've got some intolerance. Maybe you've got something in your diet that is flaring this up. What my inkling is that this sympathetic tone, this sympathetic dominant state that Woody's talking about, maybe that's just ramped up a bit too much on our dial. And because we're such survival machines, you've just gotten used to that. You wake up every day and that's your normal. And maybe instead of talking to me about your diet, you need to go talk to someone like Dave Wood, and you need to figure out how to turn this back the other way. And that's what I want to talk about now, Woody, is like, say someone's listening to this and they go, holy shit, these guys are nailing it. That's me. I'm getting these digestive issues. I can't sleep properly. Like, I'm always wired up. My blood pressure, I feel that sinking feeling in my stomach throughout my day. I think this is me. Okay, this is all well and good. How do I dial back that tone? What does that even look like if we're saying, let's move from this sympathetic dominance and we want to go back to this parasympathetic?
Yeah, I think like we tend to like, there's a couple of things we tend to do. We tend to look for external sources to be able to control stress. And those external, I mean, those are things like, I don't know, like being on your phone all the time, watching Netflix all the time, or drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, eating, you know, shitty food. These are all like external things that we're trying to use to like control or combat some of these, you know, some of these physiological and psychological effects that we're having because of stress. And I think, the other big thing here is just awareness, like the other big mistake we make is like trying to get rid of the stress. And the reality is we cannot get rid of the stress unless you sell your house, divorce your wife and go and live on a tropical island somewhere and quit work. It's impossible. The stress is all around us. So it's about, recognizing that we actually just need to take a step back. We need to slow down a little bit, and we need to invest back in our personal health, because the best way that you can combat stress is to be healthy. And that's focusing on those pillars of health, man. We all know what they are. They're the simple things. They're the basic things. We've got to get the simple, basic things right, because that is how you push back against stress. And if we look at some of those things, it's like your sleep hygiene, your fluid intake. These are things that we've known from a young age, your nutrition, and you've got to get your mind right in everything in life. We talk about physical health, right? Everyone can relate to that. And then we talk about mental health. And as soon as we mention mental health, we have this like negative perception of mental health being for people that are mental. No, mental health is just as important as physical health. And you've got to get your mind right in everything in life. And a lot of the work that we do with the athletes or people that I work with is about creating a system and protocol for this thing, your mind. You're working on your mindset. It's so important in terms of being able to regulate stress and pressure. But yeah, Geordie, it's just the simple things, man. It's like recognizing that these symptoms that we're having is our body's way of telling us, hey, we need to just slow down a little bit. You need to have a better awareness of what is going on. And you need to realize that actually it's not a convoluted process to get out of stress. A lot of the time, it's just these simple low-hanging fruits, those pillars of health that we want to integrate into our day. And then we could also talk about, some things that some sort of systems and protocols we can start integrating throughout the day that push back against that sympathetic dominant state and shift us into that sort of parasympathetic state, which is really important, because if you're gearing up for battle all day, how do you expect to be able to sleep at night? And one of the hallmarks of chronic stress is where it spills over into your sleep, and you go to sleep, but your mind's racing. You wake up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and your mind's racing. Well, that's a really hallmark sign that you are starting to feel the effects of chronic stress.
Two things I want to go over here, Woody, and both are very important. First thing I want to say is that I'm going to wind back to what we said at the start of the episode, where, like you said, when we go to a specialist or when we see a dietitian, strength conditioning coach, we see a physio, whatever, we all look at everything through the lens of our specialty, when in reality, if health is this big pink elephant, we're trying to figure it out. Really, we're all just touching different parts of the elephant. I hope by listening to this, it's starting to become clear that, okay, your health is this big pink elephant, and we're all just talking about the same thing, right? Like what Woody's saying is, if you're in this sympathetic dominant state, then of course you're going to have, it's expected that you'll have digestive issues. So when you come to your dietitian, maybe I'm looking at, these FODMAP foods or intolerances that you may have, when in reality, the issue could be that you've got this low-grade chronic stress, and that's taking blood away from your rest and digest processes. And that might just be the simple fix. And I'm going to say this out loud, because 95% of the time people bring this to me, especially corporate guys, it's not these FODMAP foods, it's not gluten, it's not lactose, it's not all these things. It's, hey, Jenny, what you need to do is you need to figure out a way where you're not freaking out so much in traffic every day. You need to reorganize your day so that when Susan from account comes in, she's not busting your balls. You need to come up with strategies to handle this stress. And then all of a sudden, these digestive issues go away. Their sleep improves. Their recovery gets better. Now, this is the next question. Second part of this, Woody, that I want to talk to you about. And you've said this to me, and it was the most obvious thing I've ever heard, but the most single-handedly game-changing thing in my business, my personal life, and in my own training. You said this to me. You said anxiety and stress is the exact same feeling as excitement. And what's the difference between that? And the difference is that the way that you perceive it, and the way that you look at it, and the way that you respond to it. And it was single-handedly the most important thing that I've ever heard in my life. Can you talk to us about that? Why is it that we have to respond to stress in a way, not where we reframe it, where we can tap into this parasympathetic tone, where if we respond to it and we're always looking at it through the frame of anxiety and stress, we're probably going to push that sympathetic. If we reframe our perspective of it, maybe then we can start pushing into this parasympathetic. And old Susan, when she starts getting all of these sympathetic drivers coming in, maybe then she can start turning up the parasympathetic tone.
Yeah, you cut out for about half of that, but I think I got the main gist of it, man. It all comes back to like that self-regulation, your ability to manage your emotional state. And you know, if we just break this, did you? They cut out for quite a bit. Did you have an actual question in there, or?
Question is, what is the importance of how we perceive stress? Because obviously anxiety and excitement are the exact same thing. The only difference is how we're perceiving this and how we're responding to it. Talk to us about the importance. And I was saying that was single-handedly the most important thing that you said to me. That's probably the biggest, most influential thing that I've ever heard in my business life, my personal life, and my own athletic training goals. That was the biggest shift in my mindset that has positively influenced my life and all those aspects. Can you just expand and explain that? Because I think that leads into this conversation when we talk about the integrated training and we talk about the ice baths, the breath work and running up hills with weights and all of this stuff, why that's important. Talk to us about anxiety and excitement. Same thing, only difference is your perspective on it.
Yeah, shifting your perspective is one of the most important, is one of the most potent ways to intercept psychological stress, so stress pertaining to your mind. And you can look at things through a 1,000 different lenses, right? So let's take that into a situation, right? Someone pulls in front of you in the car and you just react and you get all wound up and you start swearing. Before you know it, you're stressed, your blood pressure's up, your heart rate's going. Right, you've just practiced acute stress. Now you go practice that 100 times more in a day and you will adapt to that. You'll end up with chronic stress. Now let's take you back to that moment someone pulls in front of you in a car. Shift your perspective. That's all you've got to do. You've just got to stop, take a step back and shift your perspective. Who cares? Why are you going to give your energy to that? You know, why are you going to allow that to raise your blood pressure? It is a real sign of weakness just reacting like that. We've got to just take a step back and realize what's going on and what's important. And what's important is controlling your energy output. And that's all about, shifting your perspective. We have like a 5-step method for intercepting stress in real time. And the third component of that is shifting your perspective. So the first component is we should always embrace stress, because it gives you control. If you try to push it away, it'll still be there. So first of all, you want to embrace stress. Again, that gives you control. Second of all, we want to change our language. Changing the language is extremely powerful. It intercepts stress here, psychologically pertaining to your mind. And you can be creative here. You can use your language to elicit a calm state. You can use your language to intercept stress in real time. And then the third thing is shifting your perspective. And it's kind of tethered to changing your language, but that's just that ability to be creative, use your conscious mind and look at something differently, through a different lens. And then the fourth part is that control of your breathing rate and depth. That's intercepting physiological stress in your body. And really, we want to have systems for intercepting stress here and in your body. That's top-down control of stress versus bottom-up control of stress. Much easier to actually tap into your body to control stress, and that fifth step is just that conscious control of your breathing rate, slowing your breathing down, being more consciously aware of it. And then the next step after that is just to do a quick body scan, find where you're holding tension and let it go. Because often, when we're in these moments, we're holding this tension in our body and we don't necessarily need to be. That's part of that fight, flight, or freeze response. And then the last part of that process is to smile. Smiling in the face of stress, pressure, fear, apprehension, tension. You're doing the opposite of what you would normally do, which is, to tense up and not to smile. So that's sort of like just giving like a sort of like a 6-step protocol in real time to push back against stress.
What's funny, Woody, is since I started doing this ultra endurance, it's the single-handedly most hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. And one thing that I found when I'm on the trails or I'm out running and you're out there for hours and hours and you're going through these mental battles, I've noticed that a lot of people, when I run past them, they always smile and wave at me. And it took me a while to figure out why. And it's because I've trained my brain when we're doing ice baths, when we do breath work, when I go out and do these crappy things, my response, my mental capacity when I'm going through this is to smile as a response and be like, this is awesome. Like I'm growing. And I do this subconsciously now. And I couldn't figure out why all these people were just running past me like, hey, like in my mind, I must be look like I'm dying. I'm out here for like 8 hours, I'm like squirting electrolytes all over my face, missing. But it's so powerful when you understand that. And the reason I want to talk about this and get this background before we even start talking about the breathing or the ice baths is because if we're talking about Susan, the corporate girl who's all stressed out every single day, there is absolutely opportunities for all throughout her day to put this into practice and to change how she's responding to these stresses. She's in traffic. There is maybe breathwork exercise she can do in her car so she doesn't respond to the stress. When Jenny from accounts or whatever comes in to bust her balls about payroll or whatever, she can do exercises for how she responds to that. You accumulatively do that over time. It is monumental, the impact that'll have for not only how you respond to that, but for all other aspects of your health, for all other aspects of this big pink elephant that we're talking about, your nutrition, your training, your recovery, your sleep, your mental state. It is phenomenal how much of a powerful impact just learning to respond to these stresses will have in all those aspects of your life.
Yeah, 100%, man. And yeah, I guess like for all those people that are like feeling that burden of stress, the thing to be aware of is that you can change. We have this, obviously humans have this incredible ability to change, and that's called, at a brain level, that's called neuroplasticity. We have the ability to rewire the brain and how it functions, right? And a lot of that just comes back to being aware, man, just being like, I asked, we did this exercise in the pool where we sort of go around and we each tell each other what our mindset is, one of our mindset things. And when it got to Israel, he said that, Israel Adesanya, UFC middleweight champ, he said that his mindset was, and I found this just so enlightening, man, and so, on another level of thinking. And it was, his mindset was to not react, but to respond. And reacting, and why that is so powerful is because reacting often comes from those subconscious patterns of behavior. Someone pulls in front of you in the car, oh, fuck, just react. Actually, responding is like where you just take a step back. You might do a couple of slow breath cycles, shift yourself back into that parasympathetic state where all the creativity comes from, where you're able to focus better. Man, that's the part of our nervous system that we want to access in these high pressure, high stress, or not even high pressure, high stress, but there's just these, moments where we normally just react without thinking. Now, the ability to do that and to start making it an ingrained pattern of behavior, like you said, will change every single facet of your health and your performance. And, you start training it, and then you start taking it into dynamic situations where you have really quick access to it. And that's the beauty, man. That's the beautiful thing is, a lot of, if we just take fighting, for example, yeah, there are moments in a fight where you just need to bite down and react, but actually, that'll get you through a lot of situations, but it'll get down and be creative and respond creatively, and plot traps, and use your lateral movement and all these wonderful things, you can do in these high pressure, high stress situations. But we've got to train for it, man. We just, train it in your daily life. Like, just have this, one of my mindset things is, I do not lose control. Now, that's the framework that I've created for my mind. That's incredibly powerful because, like, growing up, for me, stress would like spill over in terms of like anger. It would often come out as anger or frustration, and that got me into trouble a lot. But what I've realized is like, I can change. I can, I can change the way that I approach things and the way that I respond to things and be way more creative. And so that mindset thing for me, I do not lose control. I stay composed, I stay focused, is like a rule that I live by. And this is the work that we do with, or the work that I do with people, is starting to frame some of these things up to have systems and protocols for the way they think and respond. Yeah.
I'm going to add two things here. I'm going to add a comment to that, and then I'm going to touch on this point where this is something that you physically need to train. Like, we put a lot of effort into our physical training, And I want to make a comment on this to highlight why it is so important that you put effort into this mental training, just like you do with your physical training. And what I want to say is that from my perspective, as a dietitian, performance nutrition, working with some of the best athletes at what they do in the world, so some of the best leaders across Australia and New Zealand, to just everyday people, when you're talking about nutrition, all it is every single day, it's just a bunch of decisions that you make. It's a bunch of decisions that you make throughout your day. And it's the accumulative effect of what those decisions are over time. Does that get you to whatever your goal is? That's what I tell all my clients. There's no real bad decisions. There's no real good decisions. Is that decision going to help you get to wherever that goal is? And I find with nutrition, why something like this is so important, because a lot of people can get really caught up if they go, you know what, I'm out at a restaurant and I'm on an eating plan and I don't have access to scales and I can't do this. And it's such a stressor to them. But if they have these capacities and these abilities to be like, sit back, take a step back, breathe and go, you know what, I'm going to control what I can control here. I know my ultimate goal is this, and that I know what these fundamental principles that Geordie taught me are. So I understand what I need to do at this restaurant. I can't get access to this. I'm not going to let it stress me out. You know what? That's just not productive to this. I'm going to do what I can with this. I'm going to make the best choice I can. And then the rest of my choices throughout my week, I'm going to make them so I get better to this goal. That might not sound like that's important, but it's huge, because in dieting, that is one of the biggest things that throws people off. Is in our busy lives, we get thrown all of these stresses. And people, if they don't have these mechanisms to deal with that stress, if your goal is to lose weight or to be a performance or whatever, and dieting is the tool you're using, that these stresses can throw that off. And even though what Dave's talking about with this mindset, learning how to handle the stress, may seem like it's completely nothing to do with diet, it has everything to do with diet. And I'm bringing this back to this concept of this pink elephant, where we're all touching different areas of the pink elephant, but we're all talking about the same thing. It's all integrated. And this is what Dave does with this integrated training. It's not like you're just doing breath work. It's not like you're just doing ice bath. You're learning how to handle different stresses that come at you in your life so you can make better decisions every day to get to whatever that goal is. And now going on to the second point that I want to make is that, like everything else that you do in life, you have to actively put time and effort in to train this. It's not like you just wake up, you can go to the gym and do 100 kilo bench press or whatever. You cannot do that. You have to slowly work up. The exact same as when we're talking about this mental aptitude, this ability to handle stress, to self-regulate, to turn this dial of the sympathetic and parasympathetic up and down. You have to physically train it. Dave, talk to us about, you don't have to give away all the secrets, but what are some of the common things that you're taking your clients, your athletes, whoever through to start training this system?
Yeah. Okay. The first thing, man, is you have to understand the underlying mechanisms. Nothing will work unless you understand what you're doing, right? And so I get them to understand, what the nervous system is. So we break that down. We use, like we might use the whiteboard, or we'll send them videos so they have visual representation of what the nervous system is, what it looks like, what the breathing is, what it looks like. With everything, we have to understand underlying mechanism. That doesn't mean we need to go really deep. They just need to have an understanding. Right, once they have an understanding, then we need practical application. That's where we start training this stuff so that these people can feel what it's like to shift in real time from that sympathetic to that parasympathetic. And so now they're doing the practical exercise, but while they're doing it, they have access to, understand, what's actually happening, because we've taught them that. So the big thing here is understanding theory and practical application, the two together. We often get that wrong. I think we sort of we will explain the concepts to someone, and without the practical application. So what that might look like, so we might get a client into an upregulated, to be physically and mentally upregulated. So that might just require punching the bag for 2 minutes, right? The heart rate's up, the blood pressure's up, they're in a sympathetic dominant state. Right, now lie down on the ground and you're going to follow this breathing cadence for the next 5 to 10 minutes. And there's a whole lot of nuance in there to elicit a calm state. There's a whole lot of other cues in there to elicit a calm state, but what they're doing is they are focusing on the breathing and shifting their nervous system into that parasympathetic state. So now we have a really good understanding of it. Right, that is you in an upregulated state. This is you in a downregulated state. Right, how quickly can you shift in between a sympathetic and a parasympathetic state? What does that look like, and how do we train that? Well, there's so many different ways. Like we use one way that we train this is, using the ice baths. Right, you get in an ice bath and you are shunted into a deep sympathetic state, a deep survival state. Everything is telling you to get out. Right, how do you regulate that in real time? How do you be in that stressful environment but remain calm, remain focused, remain alert, hold that ability to be creative in that moment? And so, yeah, there's so many different ways to train this. And I think we need to, a lot of the training is initially like in a static environment, like you'll see a lot of the athletes or the people I work with lying on the ground with their feet up. They're practicing some form of meditation, focusing their mind, shifting their nervous system. And we want to train that pattern every day, right? And what we often see, Geordie, is you will get someone, what's easier, to punch a bag for 2 minutes or to go and sit down and try to focus your mind for 5 minutes? What is more difficult?
Oh, slowing down.
Yeah, slowing everything down. We have this warped perception of strength. And that strength is just adding more load, go faster, more load. Well, that ends up becoming the weakness, right? And the real strength is understanding when to shift back into that recovery state. If you take an athlete who's always on the go and they think to get better, just add more load, keep training harder. Well, again, that ends up becoming the weakness. And what they often need is to access that recovery state, that internal, being able to train yourself, these body systems to shift into that calming parasympathetic state. And what I'll often see, when people start doing this, I guess it's called meditation. I just like to call it bouts of focus work, where you're just focusing, calming the mind, is that it's impossible to switch the mind off. And we often avoid meditation because we think it's about switching the mind off. And what I tell people is, no, let the mind wander, let the mind drift off, but you're focusing on the breathing cadence. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. And the beautiful thing about that is you can allow the mind to wander, but you're focusing on the breathing. And over time, 10, 15 minutes, your nervous system is shifting into that parasympathetic state. And before too long, the mind starts quietening. Because when you create when you're calm physiologically, so in your body, it has a ripple over effect into the mind, calms the mind, and vice versa. When the mind is calm, it has a ripple over effect into the body. If the mind is agitated, the body will be agitated. If the body is agitated, the mind will be agitated. These things are tethered, right? So yeah, it's a lot of the work is just getting people to understand that we can shift our state, our physical and mental state in real time, and practicing that.
Yeah, it's super powerful. And the last thing I want to touch on here before I let you go, Woody, because I know you got things to do, is something we were just talking on about off air here. Obviously, I talk a lot about running nowadays. It's kind of my new thing, but in the ultra running world, the ultra marathon world, Courtney Dewalters is the bee's knees, arms, and their legs. And Courtney is such an interesting athlete, because if you listen to her with the hat on of a performance specialist like myself or Dave, and we talk about what she does for her nutrition, what she does for her training, her strength conditioning, her recovery and everything, you hear Courtney talk and you shake your head and go, oh my God, what are you doing? She doesn't have really a set nutrition plan. She does kind of whatever for her training, whatever she goes out and feels. There's no periodization. Her recovery is just, if I feel good, I'll do this. There's not a lot of planning, but something that is so apparent when you hear Courtney talk is her capacity within her own mind and her ability to self-regulate. And she talks about this place called the pain cave, and it's just mental framing that she does. And the way that she mentally frames it is this pain cave, where she goes into this state where she knows she's putting herself through all of these stresses, and what she's developed over the years is different ways to handle this stress and to regulate her body. And in an event like an ultra marathon, and me and Dave spoke about this at length before we went live, is that all of the traditional markers of what makes good runners, like your running efficiency, your VO2 max, all of that goes out the window purely because of the huge volume that is placed on the body during this. And one of the defining features that we're seeing with these elite level ultra runners is their capacity within their own mind and their ability to self-regulate. And Courtney is such a great example because she is head and shoulders, like no pun intended, above everyone when it comes to her mental game and how she self-regulates, even though the physical side of it may not be as good. And then the thing why I like talking about this is because everyone can dwindle that back down to whatever they're doing, their little sport here, their office day job, parenting, whatever. And you can take learnings from that. You don't have to be the absolute greatest athlete. You don't have to have everything absolutely dialed in. But what you can do and what you can control is this mental game and how you respond to things. And the impact that that will have on everything else is so monumental and so, I believe, is not appreciated for how important it really is for overall performance, for whatever your performance is, whether it's you being a good parent, you being a good partner, you being successful at your job, you being a good athlete. We don't appreciate just how impactful that mental game has. And people like Courtney are showing us it is monumentally important. And that's why this training that Dave does and taking this through, why I keep talking about this concept of the pink elephant of it's all integrated, it's all the same thing. And it all starts this basic understanding your nervous system, being able to regulate, being able to respond to these stresses. It's so monumentally important.
Yeah. I always tell people, every single person I work with, I tell them about the Courtney. How do you pronounce her surname? Dewalt?
Dewalter, yeah.
Yeah. Now, she talked about this pain cave, right? And the whole thing about this run was initially in the early days, when she wasn't at the very top of the sport, was avoiding this pain cave, trying to put it off until later on in the race. And they had, strategies and things that they would do to put it off, right? Because of course you wouldn't want to be in the pain cave. But what this interviewer asked her this question, what was it that got you to the next level, to be able to push to that number one spot in the world? And one of the big things that she said was a shift in her mindset. And one of the big shifts was around this pain cave. And so no longer did they try to avoid the pain cave. The run became getting to the pain cave. The whole thing was like getting to the finish line, but running to the pain cave. Now, what that shift in mindset, that shift in perspective is so powerful, because now she has control. And also once she arrives in the pain cave, it's not the same type of stress, because that's where you're running to, that's where you're trying to get. And if we take this into just for the people listening, it's embracing the stress. Often if we just take a fighter, right, half an hour out from a fight and the stress comes in and they try to avoid it, you want to do the exact opposite. You want to bring it in. You want to embrace the stress. You want to change your language, shift your perspective. These simple things that we're talking about, man, it's not that convoluted. It's you want to put yourself in those uncomfortable moments and you want to embrace it. Straight away, you've got control. And language is so powerful, man. Language is one of the most powerful things we have access to in terms of controlling stress and pressure. But yeah, that story of Courtney and her shifting her perspective of getting to the pain cave, and that was the whole reason for her doing the race, was to get there, was what she attributed to a massive shift in her performance. And it comes back to it is you've got to get your mind right in everything in life, and it has a ripple on effect. When you do get that thing right, the mind right, and again, we really work with athletes and people that I work with hard on this to create systems and frameworks for the mind, because it's so important to get that right. And if you think about how much time and energy these people are putting into their training, and a lot of that becomes work for work's sake if you're not able to regulate that stress and pressure in real time.
Yeah, that's another thing you've said to me, and I don't think you remember saying this to me, but had a huge monumental impact on my training for ultra endurance. Is you said a lot of these guys, they don't hit the wall, they go searching for it. And once you get to the wall, and I took it a step further in my mindset, when I get to it, it's I want to go find this wall. And when I find the wall, I want to put my head on it and I want to see how far I can push it. And because I want to just keep pushing this wall, and that's what this is all about, is let's find the wall and let's push it, and let's push that wall back and let's leave more space. And it's a huge monumental thing. And the thing is that I'm talking about, what are you talking about, Courtney Dewalter and ultramarathons? That's the most extreme of the extreme. And it doesn't have to be like that. It can literally just be you getting up every morning and going for a 10-minute walk. Maybe that's the thing that you need to overcome. Maybe that's the thing that you need to do. And it doesn't have to be extreme. It's just finding that. And the point of it is not exactly like the physical output or whatever. It's how you handle it mentally and how you start developing these cues and how you learn how to self-regulate.
Yeah, so the last part of that, really just cut out on that last sentence.
I was saying it's not so much the physical. That's not the point. It's not the physical. It's the mental and how you learn to self-regulate and all of these cues and manage your mind and manage your physiology and manage your body.
Yeah. Yep, self-regulating during the day is pretty easy, man. It's like, there's so many things you can do. Get out of the office, go for a walk. That's gonna regulate your state. That's gonna push back against that stress, put you into a more calming state. Social interactions, being more social, getting out with your friends and your mates, and that, going for a swim in the ocean. Like, there's so many things, man, we can do. And yeah, we're all real busy and we're all on the go all the time, but if you don't have the awareness to push back and to start regulating this stuff, then you're going to find that you end up in a chronically stressed state, and that's a horrible place to be. But if you are there, if this is you and you're listening, man, there's just some really simple, easy things you can do to stop, be creative. How can I integrate some of these things into my day? What we're talking about is not convoluted. We often look for convoluted solutions to simple problems, and the simplicity here is we all have access to this stuff. Some breathing meditation, some going for a walk, going for a run, exercising, all these things that are accessible, that that we all have access to, and integrating it into a practice and being disciplined. The definition of discipline is doing things that we don't necessarily want to do and finding a way to love doing them. And, a lot of the, because with a lot of these athletes, like, they're overtrained, right? They're overtraining, and I'm trying to get them to understand the importance of doing like this meditative work, or, some sort of like recovery type work. And man, they avoid it. And I think the reason why they avoid it is because when you do that work, it's like a deep reflection of yourself. Like, you've really got to, it really forces you to like pull back and like reflect and on your internal state. And some people don't like doing that, but that's where all the good stuff is, man. That's like listening to your body. And when you do this work, you start working out so many things about yourself and about like, your state, your physical and mental state, because you're listening. When you're doing that work, you're listening. That's all you're doing. You're listening to yourself and what's going on. And yeah, man, I notice, like, for myself, when I don't, when I get real busy and I go away from my, the protocols and systems that I've created for myself to push back against stress during the day, I notice it starts spilling over to my sleep. And when it does that, like, one bad sleep will affect reaction time by 22%. And then so I'm buggered for the next day, and this has happened to me recently, just getting really busy and going away from those, those structures that I have in my day. And when it starts spilling over to my sleep, that's when I know, man, it's like a real kick in the ass. It's like, hey, I got to get back on the program. I got to, because we were not designed to be this busy, right? Stress has always been around, like, we tend to think that like stress is a new thing. No, like 1,000 years ago, of course we had stress. Like, hundreds of years ago, we had the same stress, like, it was like having to go out and hunt and find food and like survival. It was like, there was stress everywhere. It's just now the stress, I think, because we live in concrete jungles, and there's a lot more stimulus, and a lot of that stimulus activates that stress response. And so it's nowadays, it's even more important to push back against this stuff.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And we could talk for hours and hours and hours on this, but we have run over time, Woody. So just last thing, if people are listening to this, and I no doubt they will think, holy shit, I do need to take this more seriously. How do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, through the website, Dave at wmw.co.nz, or through my Instagram, which is integrated training, or you can just Google integrated training NZ. Yeah.
Again, I could not recommend anyone, no matter what you're doing, if you're an athlete, if you're a parent, if you're a corporate person, if you're a tradie, everyone should be thinking about this because it applies. Like Dave said, stress is everywhere in everyone's life. It isn't good or bad. It depends how we respond to it. So Dave, thanks again. There's another cracker of an episode, and I'll probably get you on again soon and annoy you a little bit more.
Geez, Geordie, you're a legend.